Hey Sam, so I'm just going to read the last part of your question one more time, which is this might be a weird question, but do you have any advice for a journalism student that's about to graduate who wants to make short documentaries for the web and write about music, culture, science, and politics, who wants to be part of the business side of the industry? And there are two things that immediately come to mind, which I'll share, which is the first is just, well, I'd say this. When I left undergrad, in between undergrad and during grad school, really, I like to joke that I was a professional intern, right, for like a year and a half, maybe even 2 years, right? And I joke about that, but it's kind of serious, which is to say that journalism does still rely on an apprenticeship model. What do I mean by that, an apprenticeship model? Which is to say, nobody really just like rises, like is instantly placed to the top, right? Like, and I tell this to people like who go to grad school, like don't expect to graduate from grad school and then like walk to the New York Times and become the editor-in-chief of the New York Times. It just doesn't work that way. The reason why you go to journalism, either for undergrad or grad, if you're dedicated to the career path, is not that because of the degree, you'll all of a sudden be higher up. It's just the idea that you'll still start as a professional intern, right, in this apprenticeship model, but the idea is that because of your experiences and training, you'll outperform other people who don't have that experience and training until you'll rise up faster, but you still have to sort of like start at the bottom and rise up. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. And what's good about that, though, is you have the opportunity to like dip your toes into a lot of things early on. So, for example, when I was in grad school, I was a part-time grad student. At one point, I calculated that I had like 6 or 7, maybe even 8 different types of like bosses. Right? I was freelancing for Seed Magazine and Wired. I was doing something for Netscape. I was a social news curator for Netscape, which doesn't exist anymore, but at the time it did. It was, I think, or was it owned by AOL? I can't remember. Yeah, it was AOL technically, and they had a product called Netscape, which whatever. I was doing that. I was doing some consulting or contract work for Jay Rosen, an NYU professor. He had things, and I would work with him on things. I was the research assistant for a guy named Jeff Howe, who coined the phrase crowdsourcing, so I was helping him with his book. I was in grad school, and there were like at least 2 or 3 other things that like, I was like organizing events for Jeff Jarvis. And that was a little bit more on the business side. I had to like sort of learn who were the players in that business side and what they were all doing and why. So, I encourage people early on, because you can get away with sort of like dipping your toes in a lot of different things early on when you're in that apprenticeship, when you're low on in the apprenticeship model. But as you go higher and higher, then more is demanded of you, right? Like you can't be, for example, if you go fully editorial, non-business, and you become editor-in-chief of a publication, you can't then moonlight doing something else. You focus, but that's the kind of thing that happens over years, and as you become more like focused on specific things. So I encourage people actually early on to like try a bunch of things, like try your hand, especially I think you're graduating, but I tell people, especially in school, to do it because like school is the perfect place to try something and fail, because worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to have a teacher who's going to be like, you totally fucked this up. If you do that like in the real world, you'll potentially get fired. But again, this is where the apprenticeship model, it's designed to give you a little bit of leeway, a little bit of room to sort of like try something, maybe not knock it out of the park, but get better and better. Right, and learn about all the different things. So I would just encourage you to be honest, to just try as many different things as possible. But keep in mind that you will start to need to focus. Right, like what are the things that you want to divest from and invest in. Right, and they all have different paths, and you need to understand those paths. And don't confuse the forest for the trees, because while you're in that apprenticeship model at the bottom, it's definitely going to be trees, right? There's going to be like things in your way, and it's like, oh, do I really want to do this the rest of my life? Like, no, but if you follow this career path, you're not going to be doing that, right? It's like you're entering a different forest if on the documentary side than a different forest on the business side, right? So if one has you doing spreadsheets and the other one has you like, I don't know what the spreadsheet analogy is to documentaries, it's something not fun, right? You're like transcribing interviews, right? Neither of those are fun. Those are the trees. But think about, keep an eye on the forest and where you want to end up. So hopefully that helps. And yeah, good luck.